Hey guys, what is up? I am Rosie and I wanted to bring you another list. So last year or the year before, it was a few years ago, I did a list of my top 20 favorite celebrity loves. And I explained in that video that my celebrity loves are celebs that I have adored for one reason or another from childhood or from my teenagehood until now. And so I got to thinking one day, hey, there are a lot more celebrities than just 20. So I just went into the annals of my brain and found 30 more. And so here is another top 30 of my favorite famous loves. Number 30, Freddie Jackson. Freddie Jackson is a beloved 80s crooner. He made such hit songs as You Are My Lady, Rock Me Tonight for Old Time's Sake, Jam Tonight, and he specialized in the language of love. No, not French. I meant words that would make a woman swoon, that would make anybody swoon if their lover said something like those words to them. He specialized in that, and he had a beautiful, smooth tenor voice. And as I understand it, he still performs today, so good on him. I'm glad, and thankful that he's still doing what he loves to do. Number 29, James Ingram. James Ingram is another one of those dudes who had a beautiful voice. His was more baritone, but he had a gorgeous falsetto, and when he hit that falsetto, it was made to make hearts melt. When I heard that he passed away last year, 2019, I was saddened by that. He was very talented and just one of those who, if he had been allowed to live just a bit longer, he could have mentored, he could have performed, he could have just been one of those nostalgic voices that women who were in their teens, in their 20s, in the 1980s would have just gone to see on like Soul Train cruises or whatever. He was just one of those voices that you just can't get enough of. Number 28, Jeffrey Osborne. Gorgeous baritone. I think he started in a band in the 1970s called LTD. And so my mom was his fan for many years. And these three guys, it's kind of hard for me to listen to them right now because since my mom passed away March last year, it's just hard for me to listen to those songs from them that she loved. But I think I'll get back to it eventually. I just can't right now. But listening to songs from Jeffrey Osborne, James Ingram, and Freddie Jackson brings back great memories. And yeah, I miss reminiscing with her and listening to those songs. Number 27, Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy was one of the greatest comedians that has ever walked the earth and still is. Recently, I think he was in a movie called Dolomite on Netflix. And also, December 21st, 2019, he returned to the SNL stage. He didn't give us just 1 minute of a few measly, stupid words that nobody was looking for. He actually performed. He was in skits, and Lizzo was the musical guest. So we were treated to some of his old characters. Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood. Mr. Robinson's gray-haired now, and he did Buckwheat So it was just fun seeing him back on stage and just doing what he loves, being funny, being silly. And I hear that Coming to America 2 is in production, so can't wait to see what that's going to be all about. And as an honorable mention, I will put Arsenio Hall. Arsenio Hall was one of the greatest night show hosts that's ever lived. Last year on October 29th, he released a comedy special on Netflix, and it was hilarious. I'm not used to him cussing that much because I'm used to seeing him on his night show, on his, his talk show, but it was good seeing him back in his element as a stand-up comedian, and I loved it. It was great. Number 26, Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is a classic artist who started out on Motown as a child, and he could play drums, he could play harmonica, he could play piano and organ and keyboards, and he was just talented, beautiful singing voice, still has that beautiful singing voice even today. And he's much beloved, including by me, and I'm glad that he's still out there doing it. Number 25, Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor was another great comedian who was looked up to by other great stand-up comedians like Eddie Murphy and so many comedians that I love and adore today looked up to Richard Pryor and looked to him for their comedic source and advice and how to be funny and engage people in their comedy. So yeah, Richard Pryor was one of the greatest. When he passed away, I was really sad by that, and I wasn't surprised, but I was saddened by it because he was really funny and much beloved and still missed even today. Number 24, Dana Carvey. Dana Carvey, I first saw him on SNL, and then I started seeing his comedy specials and stuff, which I own 2 of them, and saw a third that he did on Netflix. And he's still funny even now. I have loved him since I was a child, in the 80s, mid 80s. And, oh gosh, he just brings back great memories. Just thinking of his face brings back great memories. Of course, I was a teenager in the 90s, so Wayne's World, and he was Garth, and he played drums, and oh gosh, man, dang. Just to go back to that time, even for a few minutes. And speaking of Wayne and Garth, number 23 is Mike Myers. Mike Myers played he played Wayne in Wayne's World. Sorry for the flub there. He played Wayne in Wayne's World. And he also started out on Saturday Night Live. If he didn't start out there, that was at least the first place where I saw him. And those old players from the 80s and the 90s don't get a lot of recognition, I don't think, or they don't get as much as they should. Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, Mike Myers, David Spade, just Adam Sandler. They don't get as much recognition as they should because people will look at a celebrity and they'll sort of throw them away, then give them respect. But as soon as they die, then everybody loved them. And so I want to do something, that's why I'm doing this, to show that I still love them, I still support them, and I miss them. I wish that Mike Myers would do more movies because he was funny and he was talented, and I'm pretty sure that he still has a lot that he can do if given the right script. Number 22, Howie Mandel. I remember Howie Mandel from the early 80s on St. Elsewhere and doing his stand-up comedy routine with like a latex glove on his head, using his sinuses to blow it up. And he eventually did that so much till he damaged his sinuses and couldn't do that anymore. And now you see him on television shows and he's all bald and stuff. And I heard that the reason he shaved his head was because of his OCD, and he felt dirty with his hair and just feels cleaner without it. So I can understand that. I have OCD. Thankfully mine isn't that severe, but I do understand where he's coming from with it. But to this day, I love Howie Mandel. I remember a movie he did called Walk Like a Man, and then he did this cartoon Bobby's World. He did the voice of Gizmo in the Gremlins movies, and so I have loved him for a very long time. Number 21, Sinbad. Sinbad is a comedian, stand-up comedian from the 1980s and 1990s, which was the height of his popularity. He is still working today, and I'm thankful to see him on TV more. And for his old vintage stuff or classic stuff that he did back in the day, I look on YouTube, and it's really good seeing his face. And funny enough, he was the subject of a recent Mandela effect theory. People think that he was in this movie called Shazam or something like that. And I know that Shaq did a movie with that title or a similar title, but Sinbad never did. But the thing is, when it was brought up, I thought he was in a movie like that too, even though I didn't remember it until it was brought up. And I'm like, oh yeah, he did do that movie. What happened to it? And it doesn't exist. Never happened. False memory. Number 20, Phil Hartman. Phil Hartman was one of the greatest comedians and actors to ever hit the SNL stage. And then he left to chase his own endeavors, and he did great at it. He was in Simpsons episodes and as a voice actor. He was in News Radio, which is the show that he was on when he was sadly killed by his wife. And he was just doing so much, and he could have done so much more had he been allowed to live. And I just really, really was shocked when his wife killed him. I still remember seeing that on the news, and gosh, I don't know why sometimes people who want to kill themselves feel the need to take somebody with them. It wasn't fair. He didn't deserve that. They had 2 small children who were left orphaned by that. And so, wow, rest in peace, Phil Hartman. 19, Whoopi Goldberg. The first time I ever saw Whoopi Goldberg, and I think the first time many others saw her, was in the movie The Color Purple. And I've loved her ever since seeing that movie I guess I was 11, 12 years old when I first saw it. It came out in 1985 when I was 9. And the first time I ever saw it was with my family when it hit cable like a year or so later. So I was 11 or 12 when I first saw it. I know I said I was 9 when it came out. I might have been 10, whatever. But anyway, yeah, she was a great actress. And after I saw that, I tried to see every movie that she was in. Jumpin' Jack Flash, Fatal Beauty, just whatever movie she was in, I tried to see it. Generally, I don't have respect for people who cheat, and she was Ted Danson's very public mistress for a while, but I respect her I respect her and how sassy she is on The View, even though I don't watch that show. I respect how honest she is. I respect her acting talent, her comedic talent, and I wish that she would do more of that, because she deserves to be known for what she specialized in before she was on The View. Number 18, Sting. The first time I remember seeing Sting was in the video for Roxanne. And I think I might have had a little crush on him back then. He was just one of the most beautiful men that I had seen up until that point. And then I saw Billy Idol. But for that, you have to watch the other video. But, yeah, Sting is, just one of the greatest white artists to do reggae. I'm not sure if he's the only one, but I know he's one of the greatest. And I love his music. I always have. I'm not a fan of everything he's ever done, but I am a fan of a lot of it, especially the stuff he did with his old band, The Police. So, love him. Number 17, Tom Petty. Tom Petty, oh gosh, the first time I ever saw him, I remember asking my mom, "Mama, is he some kin to us?" Because he had our last name. It didn't matter to me that he was a white man with blonde hair and blue eyes. He had our last name, and that was all I saw. So I asked my mom, "Is he some kin to us?" And she looked at me and she said, "God, no." I was like maybe 6 or 7 at that time. But I've loved his music from the time I was that little 6-year-old kid. Maybe I was 5 until now. And I remember seeing his video for Refugee and The Waiting on MTV, original MTV, back when they showed music. And I've really liked a lot of the material, the songs that he came up with. He was a really talented artist, and I think he was planning to retire after his last tour, but I think a day or two after he returned home from his last tour, he passed away from cardiac arrest. That night when I woke up, people were already saying "Rest in peace, Tom Petty," and he hadn't even died yet. I think he was on life support at that point. But I waited until it was confirmed that he had passed, and that was when I gave my rest in peace. Number 16, Phil Collins. I love Phil Collins. And the fact that he still performs, even though he has to sit down on the stage and sing. The fact that he still does that, even though he fell on stage once. I salute him. I have loved him ever since I was 5 or 6. And I remember first seeing him do a cover of the Supremes' Can't Hurry Love. And I've loved him ever since then. And then In the Air Tonight. And it's amazing how people will latch on to a song years and decades after the fact. In the 1990s, when I was in high school, I was sitting in class one day, and there was this girl beside me singing the chorus of the song, because of course that was all she knew. And then after she sang the chorus, she looked over and she said, "That white boy know he was getting down in that song." And I was thinking, bitch, do you know how long he's been famous and how long that song's been out? I was more pissed off by the seeming disrespect that she approached that song with than anything. So I've always loved him. And not only that, but he's a great drummer also. so I respect him. I have a natural affinity for drummers. My dad was a drummer when I was born, so it just followed me throughout my life. Love Phil Collins. Number 15, Davy Jones of the Monkees. The first time I ever saw the Monkees was sometime in the mid-1980s. My mom talked about the Monkees, and then the show came on. Or either the show came on and she was telling me how she liked them when she was young. So I would watch them, and then my favorite was little Davy Jones. I always thought he was adorable and he was cute. And when I heard that he died, I was heartbroken. I was really sad about that. He was just always really talented, and people don't pay attention to the fact that Axl Rose basically stole Davy Jones's dance. But yeah, Davy Jones was always adorable. I always had a crush on him because he's such a cutie pie, and yeah, he was just one of those in my heart, and I guess he always will be. Number 14, Carol Burnett. My mom introduced me to Carol Burnett as a child, so I would watch her show whenever I could. And before my mom got sick, before she had her stroke, I bought my mom a DVD set of Carol Burnett because she loved her so much. And so I bought that for her to watch, and she appreciated it. I think she might have watched it once or twice, but I just regret that I never got to watch it with her. Oh gosh. Yeah. So, and as other honorable mentions are Tim Conway and Harvey Korman. They were just hilarious together, and watching their skits and watching them break character in the skits to crack up makes you crack up. And oddly enough, I was watching some Harvey Korman and Tim Conway skits on YouTube, and then shortly thereafter, like either the same day or the day after, Tim Conway died. And oh man, I was just like, oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't have watched those videos. I know it's silly to think something like that, even ridiculous, but it was just really strange how close in proximity that was, that I spontaneously watched those videos and then he passed away. But yeah, so rest in peace to them. Number 13, The Golden Girls. When that show first came out in the mid-80s, my mom and I would watch the show every week religiously. And my favorite was Dorothy. I guess everybody else would pick Rose, and I do love Rose. I love Betty White. She just seems like such a sweetheart, and she's feisty, but my favorite was Dorothy, because my favorite in any show or whatever is the grumpy one. And she was always sarcastic and grumpy. I love Grouchy Smurf. I love the Grumpy Dwarf. I love Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. So my favorite one is always the grouchy one, and she was the grouchy one. So the Golden Girls episodes bring me great memories because I used to watch it with my mother, and so they will always hold a place in my heart. And if you hear that beating and thumping, it's somebody who lives upstairs. They do that in the daytime, they do that at night, and it drives me freaking nuts. Number 12, Don Knotts. Watching Andy Griffith with my mom was always a favorite pastime. To this day, I can't whistle the theme song without breaking out into laughter because I was trying to whistle it one day with my mom and we both just cracked up for no reason. And so I can't whistle the song without laughing now. And then I used to see him years later on Three's Company as Mr. Furley. And Mr. Furley was always one of my favorite characters. I just love how shaky and goofy he was with his little ascot on and stuff. And then I discovered that he used to be on Scooby-Doo movies, the new Scooby-Doo movie or whatever that show is called. He was on at least 2 episodes of that. And Don Knotts was just always funny to me, of course, and I've always loved him. I'm laughing now because I'm thinking of an episode of Andy Griffith that always cracks me up. But anyway, I love Don Knotts. May he rest in peace forever. I just loved him. Number 11, the SNL cast from 1975 until 1995. I pretty much already talked about this with Dana Carvey, Mike Myers, and Phil Hartman. I just don't think they get enough credit, you know, and then there are the ladies who I never really hear of, you know, Jan Hooks and Nora Dunn, I think that was her name. And then there's Kevin Nealon. Of course, he's not a lady, but he was on the show in the 80s. And Al Franken, and those shows bring me great, great memories because I used to watch the show. It was so much fun. And I miss the good old days of SNL. And I know that they couldn't stay on the show forever, even though Kenan Thompson seems like he's trying to. He's broken the record as, I think, the longest running SNL cast member. I'm not sure how long he's been on there, maybe 20 years or so now. I don't know. Maybe not that long, but he's been on there a good long while. I know that much. And so, the show did have good seasons after that. I love Chris Kattan, Will Ferrell. But there are just very few characters, you know, Jimmy Fallon, there are very few characters, and there are very few cast members that I liked on the eras after certain cast members left. But the 75 through 95 for me was the heyday of my watching the show. Number 10, Janet Jackson. I don't know why, but in the 1990s, people used to tell me that I looked like her. I never saw it. I'm not kidding you. Excuse me. I'm not kidding you. People used to tell me that I looked like her, and I still never saw it. I still don't see it. I look at my old pictures, and I still don't see it. I never looked like her. Don't listen to them. They're crazy, okay? I never looked like her. But I have always loved her from the time she was Penny on Good Times up until now. There were a few years I tried to hate her because she wasn't as wholesome as she used to be, but people have to change. They have to grow. They have to evolve, and that's what she did. And I didn't think she was treated fairly during the whole Super Bowl debacle. I think that that Justin Timberlake should have taken some of the blame since he was the one that tore her bra. But yeah. Number 9, Dudley Moore. I mostly remember Dudley Moore from this movie that I have called Milo and Otis. He narrated it, and it's a cute little story about a cat and a dog that go exploring. They get lost from their farm, and they spend the rest of the time trying to find their way home, and along the way they find mates and have puppies and kittens. And then and with their families, they venture to go back home to their farm. But I watched a movie that he was in with who was it, Kirk Cameron, where I believe they somehow traded places, and I forget the whole premise of the movie. It's been a lot of years since I've seen it, but he was in the movie Arthur and everything, and so watching him in the 80s growing up was a great time and some great memories. So rest in peace, Dudley Moore. Number 8, Steve Martin. Steve Martin. The image that I have in my head of him is him in a white suit with a black tie on the SNL stage playing banjo with this arrow headband on his head. And then there's another image of him as dressed in ancient Egyptian clothing or costume on SNL, singing King Tut, the Funky Tut. And of course the song wouldn't land the same way today, especially the part, "He's my favorite honky." And I'm sorry for saying that word, but that's the image that I have of him. And also, I remember he was in a movie called The Jerk, where he was adopted by a sharecropper family in Mississippi, and he thinks that he's black until he discovers that he's not. So that's a movie that I wouldn't mind seeing again. Number 7, Diana Ross, another classic Motown artist, but I remember her from the 1970s singing "It's My House" and "I'm Coming Out" and all that. Yeah, I've always loved her. I don't have a lot of respect for how she was blatantly a mistress for Berry Gordy, but at the same time, they did love each other, and she was and is a great artist, a beautiful singer, and she deserves the respect that she gets as an artist. Number 6, Ozzy Osbourne. Sadly, Ozzy Osbourne has Parkinson's now, or a form of it, and he probably won't be able to perform anymore. But I came to know Ozzy in the 1990s. I know it's hard to believe because I've said I've been a rock chick for however many years, but I became a rock chick in the 1990s, and that is when I became acquainted with Ozzy Osbourne in his No More Tears era, and I worked backwards from there. And my first album that I've ever bought of his was No Rest for the Wicked, and then I bought The Ultimate Sin years later, maybe a year or so later. But I've always loved Ozzy ever since I became a rock chick. I'll say it that way. And there's just no way that I couldn't love him. He's just one of my favorite rockers, and hearing about his health troubles over the past few years has been heartbreaking. And all I can say is that I hope that with this new album that he just released, that he finds a way to perform it before he retires for good. Number 5, Alice Cooper. I also became acquainted with Alice Cooper in the 1990s in his Hey Stupid era. And with the same with Ozzy, I worked backwards from there with Alice. And then that was when I heard School's Out on classic rock radio. So I knew who he was before Hey Stupid, but I didn't know much more of his work besides School's Out and Welcome to My Nightmare. But I love Alice Cooper. He's one of my favorites. Number 4, Benjamin Orr. He has a beautiful singing voice. The first thing that I've noticed about him were his eyes. And he was just one of the most beautiful men that I think I'd ever laid eyes on up until that point. And then he sang. And when he sings The Car Drive, oh man, it just makes you melt. And so when I heard that he passed away in 2000 from cancer, of course I was really saddened by that. And to this day, he's just one of my loves. Number 3, Freddie Mercury. I've known about Freddie Mercury since I was a little kid. My mom actually introduced me to Queen because she would sing We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions to me. And even though I didn't really know what he looked like until probably Wayne's World came out and they re-released the video for Bohemian Rhapsody, I did know who Queen was. So I'm trying to think if I knew any songs other than those two before Bohemian Rhapsody. I can't really remember, but I've known about Queen for quite a long time. And of course, I'm gonna love Freddie Mercury and Queen forever. Number 2, there's a tie. Christian Slater and Michael Keaton. Christian Slater, I remember first seeing in this movie called The Legend of Billie Jean. And I remember that I thought he and Helen Slater were brother and sister, simply because they have the same last name, spelled the exact same way. And I think I was last years old when I found out they weren't even related. And it might have been like maybe 2-3 years ago when I found that out. I don't know, but I still have a crush on Christian Slater, okay? I still think he's quite hot. After that, there was Gleaming the Cube, and there was Heathers, of course. I have Heathers, and I love watching that. And then there was Interview with the Vampire. And I just love Christian Slater. My kids even think he's hot, but they hate his voice. I never had a problem with his voice. But yeah. And Michael Keaton, I remember in the 80s as Mr. Mom. I think that was 1983. And then he was in Beetlejuice. I have Beetlejuice because I love that movie. I've always loved it. And then he played Batman, and that is where the crush kicked in. So yeah, I love Michael Keaton to this day, and he is arguably the best Batman. There are millennials saying that Michael Keaton was the best Batman. So who am I as a Gen Xer to fight with a millennial who says that he was arguably the best Batman? But I can't really say that in all fairness because I'm speaking in bias. I have not seen Christian Bale's Batman. I've only seen Adam West, Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, and George Clooney. And among those other actors, I just think Michael Keaton was the best. Now, like I said, I haven't seen Christian Bale's version of Batman. I don't know if I want to, because I don't like the way he talks when he is Batman, but whatever. I might give in one day, I don't know. And number 1, the internet's boyfriend, Keanu Reeves. I had Keanu in my sights ever since he was ever since he was Ted in Bill and Ted. And then number 3, Bill and Ted 3 is coming out later this year in August. I think the release date is August 21st. And dude, I cannot wait to see it. I'm gonna have to brush up on my Bill and Teddies a bit by watching both movies before they come out, before the third one comes out. But I have loved this guy. I never saw a problem with his acting. I never did. I think he's gorgeous as fuck, and I just love the guy. I think the crush kicked in during Point Break. Yeah, he was pretty freaking hot in that movie. And I've also seen him in Devil's Advocate, and of course The Matrix as Neo. I love The Matrix. I don't want to watch number 3 again because he dies in that one, but I hear that a Matrix 4 is coming out and that he's gonna be in it. So maybe I'll rethink it. I don't know. But I just know that I've loved him for quite many years. And I remember him in the Push Push video with Paula Abdul. And oh man, oh gosh, I don't know, I can't say enough about him. I think he's adorable, and I think he's a sweetheart, and I think that the respect and the love that he's getting now is well respected and well deserved and well regarded, well respected, really. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, Keanu Reeves is number 1. If I think of any more, you know I'm gonna tell it eventually. But I hope you like this video. Give me a thumbs up if you do. And also share and subscribe if you care to. And I want to thank you for wasting time with me. And I love you very, very much. I hope to see y'all on the next upload. I'm going to do something for my throat now. And bye for now.